7, continuation of public hearing regarding amendment to North Smithfield, the North Smithfield zoning ordinance. A, petition to rezone property described as Assessors Plat 17, Lot 14, located off of Eddie Dowling Highway, from residential suburban to business highway, by Benoit Realty LLC, this evening for discussion by council, vote, or other action. Who is leading us off this evening? Is the town planner in the room? Yes. Would you care to lead us off this evening?
Well, first I will note that there has been floating around a composite mock-up of what the plan is, which is totally wrong. There's property to the left that Benoit Realty has not acquired yet, which is shown to be paved wall to wall onto Sales Hill Road with another display room, even bigger than the one that we're seeing here. And the part that we're actually talking about is shown with no buffer and cars facing every which way. I wish whoever did that would come forward and explain why they did that, but I think it's really created a tremendous misimpression of the Anchor Realty intent, the Anchor Subaru intent. So, having said that, I will say we've been in discussions about what their multiple options are. They have done some test borings, and they are here to present what they have shown today and to discuss possible revisions to the plan in conjunction with the needs of the neighbors. So I will let them make the presentation.
Mr. Erickson, I just want to make it clear for the record, I'm not sitting as a zone planning review, the town councilman. I'm here to look at zone changes to zones. But in order for me to formulate my opinion, I need to have as much information as possible on the plan. I'm going to act in any facet. You mentioned a plan or something that circulated. Is there a date? What I have is a November 13th site plan.
No, this is an aerial, 8.5 by 11.
Okay.
Mocked up to make the plan look like, make the project look like it's at least twice what it is in size.
That wasn't in the materials that were presented to us this evening, right?
No, I have the Subaru as
Okay.
Well, if I may, Mr. President, I guess what the applicant is going to do, that's going to be their application tonight, is what we're going to see. I would like really up to date everything, if you would. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
My name is David Iglesias. I'm the attorney for the applicant, Angus Subaru. I'm the president of the entity. Actually, the entity in question is Benoit Realty LLC, and the principal in that entity is Mr. Robert Benoit. Mr. President, as you recall, we effectively concluded our formal presentation at the last meeting, and then you were hearing from the public. When we concluded, after we heard some comments from the public, we had indicated to the board at the end of the meeting what the, essentially, the plan as revised since, let me strike that. On December 20, 2013, I filed a petition requesting an amendment to the zone change, and that's in the hands of the clerk, and I reviewed it with her this morning, this afternoon, just prior to this meeting. That's still exactly what we're requesting, is the petition to change the zone. Subsequent to December of 2013, we had meetings with, obviously, neighbors, and we had a negotiated agreement with one neighbor, represented by attorney Mark Krieger. And at the conclusion, or at the close of our last meeting, I had presented to you that essence of that agreement. And I checked with the clerk, and she indicated she didn't have it. I brought another one, and I reviewed this with Mr. Erickson today, and there was a typo in it. And other than that typo from the last meeting, it's exactly what I presented to you. It was a typo because originally the applicant was asking the council not only to do its own change, but also our original application was asking for relief as to special use relief and variances, of which normally would be the zoning board responsibility. And that has all been removed. The only thing we're asking the council to do is a zone change, subject to the restrictions, limitations, and agreements that we have with at least one neighbor. Does that make sense?
And is that represented by this document?
I'd like to approach the board. That was the, what was originally filed. If you go to the front of that,
Please.
Just so I can make clear, you have the right paperwork. Originally was filed with this petition for zone change, with the zone map.
December 20th, 2015.
Right. At the conclusion of last meeting, I presented to you what was a, if I can point this out, this is what I presented to you last meeting, which was a draft ordinance, your review, the lawyer, the legal counsel review, as well as the plan review. I presented to you last meeting as well. There was a typo when I presented to last meeting. Mr. Erickson brought it to my attention, it was yesterday or today, it's been corrected. And what this essentially does, and I will give you appreciation to the clerk, to make sure that it is properly marked, and I apologize to the clerk for that. And what this has done is...
Excuse me, Greg, I have one quick question. How do the limitations, conditions, and restrictions compare to this?
Yes, this originally we were changing, we were asking the council to change the zone, but also to grant, as a comprehensive power, to grant special use permits and variances. As a result of discussions with Mr. Erickson, he said to us, leave that, if the council was to change the zone, we leave variances in the zoning for the zoning board work. So what we did was we amended it to remove all variances and special use permits. We're not asking for that. But we are asking to live up to our agreement to at least one neighbor represented by Mr. Krieger that has these limitations, restrictions, and agreements. These are not special, he's not giving us more, he's not giving us less.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I just wanted to be clear what the difference was.
And that's really the difference. But the petition is accurate. The amendment is been reviewed by Mr. Erickson. We actually went through this amendment, Mr. President, in great detail with our engineers, our architect, and our landscape architect last meeting. And just to sort of refresh your recollection, if you look on the map, it indicates, at the time, it indicates a list of agreements that there would be no additional noise be created by outdoor speakers, that there would be a photometric plan. We'll make every attempt to minimize the spillage onto the abutting properties, that access road would be gated and be restricted to emergency access only, that there would be no increase in stormwater runoff to any abutters property, that there would be no cut buffer and conservation easement, landscape grading area, and no commercial building area as provided in a certain site plan prepared by Joe Casali Engineering, Inc., dated January 2014, which is represented on the plan that's on 8.5 by 14. This is what we had presented to you at the last meeting, and this is the documentation that we presented. And at the time, the ordinance was presented to you as a draft proposed ordinance. And then at that point in time, I believe we started hearing some comments from the public. So I guess it'd be appropriate to hear whatever comments the public have. And if we think we do have all, as I indicated to the board, the council last meeting, we would have all our experts here. And after we hear the comment, if you think you need to hear from an expert, we still need to put them up.
Okay.
Rather than, we don't need to retread old ground. We spent quite a bit of time doing that already now.
I'd just like to first ask if there's any questions from members of the council.
I just wanted to give you exactly where we are at the moment.
Thank you. No questions yet. So at this time, it would be appropriate if anybody would like to approach the podium. Just please state your name, sir, and your address for the record, please.
My name is Michael Thompson. I live at 152 Sales Hill Road. Tonight I don't want to speak on behalf of myself, but I also have been given the duty of presenting you with something that we, as a neighborhood or community of Sayers Hill, Iron Mine, Old Sayers Hill, and Chamberlain Court, we had gotten together and gone over a few things. And I guess our main request from you is that that you deny the request by Benoit Realty to change the zone. That's our main focus, is what we would like to see done. We're not so foolish as to think that we're going to get just because we asked. So with that in mind, we took it upon ourselves to go around to secure over 75 signatures from members in the neighborhood of Sayers Hill, Chambers Court, Iron Mine, Old Sayers Hill. And there was a number of things that we had brought up as members of the community that we would like you to at least address or consider before you make a decision on voting on this change in the zone. I don't know if you need to or how to present this, but this is the signatures of
You can present it to the town clerk.
I also have copies for each one of you of some of the concerns that we had brought up from all of the residents in the area of the sign. A lot of people contributed to these. It's not all of the concerns, but it was major concerns that we felt were something that we would request that you would consider when bringing a vote to this issue of changing. As I stated, there's a few of these that we listed a lot of our major concerns, but again, each individual is going to speak to their own concerns tonight. I was just asked to speak in much of this that I could. One of the major concerns that we have discussed before was blasting. Knowing that if this zone is changed and this does go through and the construction and stuff, blasting is going to be a major concern for a lot of people who abut the property. And we're going to be within the blasting zone of the construction that's going to be done. In preparation for this, we did some looking back in past history because we know there's been construction going on before. We had noted that Mr. Cherry, who's located at the north end of Sayers Hill Road, had damage to his foundation caused by blasting stemming from the Anchor Subaru dealership back in December of 2011, and that this damage caused by the blastings were recorded and confirmed by his insurance company. So this is something that blasting is going to cause damage. There's no doubt it's going to happen. So the blasting is going to interfere with what we would consider our water supplies, our sewer systems, our foundations, we have in-ground pools in this area. And I understand that the last time this was addressed, we were told that, well, they have insurance. Insurance is great. Everybody has to have insurance for something. But the problem is insurance is a safeguard. It's not a surefire answer. You can have insurance for something, but after it happens, what about the inconvenience? What about, when this disturbs a water system, an underground water system that feeds all of our wells on that Sayers Hill? When you have 30 or 40 people in North Smithfield on a road that don't have water, for how long? Their insurance isn't going to, I don't see people jump when things like this happen. They're going to investigate. They're going to want to know for sure. They're going to look to lay blame on something else. They're going to look to skirt the problem and make it somebody else's problem. Well, while all of that's going on, what about the residents that live there and what they're going to have to deal with no water, hoarding water, buying water, having it shipped from somewhere else? When our septic systems aren't working and we can't flush the toilet and you're trying to come up with alternate solutions. When your pool has drained onto Anchor Subaru property because we're on the top of the hill, so when your pool cracks, all the water going downhill. And your pool is empty for the summer and you have family, friends, kids, neighbors that use your pool during the summertime to help alleviate heat, stress. Some of the summers, I think, lately, I think you all realize that they're pretty hot. And so these are things that we use as comfort. They're creature comforts. They're things that we bought these properties for, moved into these neighborhoods for. And now we're looking at somebody jeopardizing those things that we hold true and value to our hearts because they want to extend and have not a place for their cars that they're selling, but for extra inventory that they might need. Not that they're gonna need it, but they might need it. So they're looking at something that is a possibility that they might need it, as we're looking at something that we have right now that's going to be taken away from us. Traffic issues. Everybody knows, and there's been so many studies done, everybody knows that 146, the intersection of Sayers Hill and 146, has more accidents there than anywhere else in the state of Rhode Island. If you guys are going to vote on this zoning and change the zoning, they're talking about hiring more employees, 50 to 100. We're going to increase the traffic in this area. I think that if this is so dangerous an intersection, that this council needs to address that intersection and figure out a solution to try to fix it. And if you're going to fix it, if you're going to have this number of increased traffic, what is the increased cost going to be to the town of North Smithfield to fix this intersection after this increase in traffic and population coming into that area? It might cost you one figure right now because of the way it's set up. If they increase the size of their property, increase the size of their employment, increase the size of their employees and personnel, it's going to increase the traffic. Are those solutions going to be the same? Is the cost going to be the same? And are you going to end up putting the cost in the long run to fix the problem that they create by expanding their business? You know, that's going to cost taxpayers money. That's going to cost North Smithfield, Sayers Hill, or Iron Mine taxpayers, but it's going to cost the whole city taxpayers. I think that's something else that should be considered. We've all been told it's not going to cost us anything with our real estate values. I don't believe that. I come from rural areas. When people start building things around your house, it depreciates the value. If you do approve this and they do go through with it, I think there should be some type of stipulation whereas we have an appraisal done of the properties as they stand now. And if 5 years down the road we decide we want to sell our property and the value has depreciated because of what has gone on and because of the construction, that somebody should be held accountable for it. Why should we lose money in the long run because of a decision that's made without us actually wanting it to be done? You're basically, and if that's the case, if the property values do decrease, again, is there going to be an adjustment in our taxes because of the property values dropping? If those properties, I mean, there's a lot of houses there, if the property values start dropping and we start collecting less income taxes or housing property taxes from the residents, how much do you guys stand to lose by our properties being devalued? That's money that goes into the town. I know that you'll get it on another end, but is it worth it to make 75 people suffer so that one company can have what they want? As far as buffer zones and stuff, we've discussed a number of different things from all residents. Everybody has a different opinion. Again, as far as I'm concerned, 350 feet is not enough. I want my house left the way it is. I want it to stay just like I have. I like the deer in my backyard. I like the turkeys. I like my kids being able to go in the backyard and not have to worry about anything. You know, we shoot BB guns. We have slingshots. We have kids. You know, if you move within that distance of my house, I'm telling my kids, you can't do this. You got to do this. You're putting limitations on children. You're putting limitations on family who want to be in their backyards having barbecues, who want to be doing things in there that are going to feel that they can't because you've got people walking around staring at you from the dealership right next door. Berms, like I said, each person's going to have their own request of what they feel to protect their property. As far as I'm concerned, the way to protect my property is just vote no. It's as simple as that. It keeps a large number of the community happy. I don't think that by saying no, that you're stopping them from their company getting any bigger or getting any better. There's certainly all types of corrective construction, however you want to put it, modifications, upgrades that can be made to the existing property and what property they already own without having to rezone an area that was zoned as a residential area. I hope that I kept it as concise. I'll give as many people as chance as they can to speak.
I I do have one quick question, Mr. Thompson, because I've been thinking back to the first public hearing that we had. I think it was on January 22nd. Was it 22nd? I think it was the 22nd. Because I remember you spoke then, and my recollection of it was that that you were supportive of the zone change, but that you had a number of things that you wanted to know were going to be met. I don't have that in front of me because I took notes, and I don't have the notes from January 21st, but it seems to be a very different testimony this evening. I'm just wondering if there was something specific that changed between January 21st and now.
When we came last time, we were discussing mostly the layout and the buffers and stuff, not so much the zoning change. And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't as knowledgeable of all the things that were going on. And I was pretty much led to believe that this, as a lot of people have that we spoke to when we went out with our signatures, that a lot of people thought this was a done deal. That we had, we were just trying to make concessions to accept it. We were basically on our knees and that we didn't have a choice. And it wasn't until the last meeting after I spoke that I got the understanding that they haven't even rezoned yet, and a lot of this hasn't gone through. We were, like I said, trying to be as open-minded as we could be, knowing that, or thinking that it had already been pushed, that we didn't have a choice, so we were trying to get whatever concessions we could.
Well, I just want to be clear, it's on the agenda the same way this evening as it was on the 21st, in terms of being a proposal to rezone. I think it was pretty clear that it was not, the decision to rezone had not been made. And I'm just picking up on a different sense from you. That's why I wanted to ask.
Again, the last time we came, I hadn't really looked at all of the things that were going on, and I apologize for my ignorance in that fact. I'm not a politician, and a lot of the things that I found out at that meeting afterwards, I realized that we had a lot more options than I thought we had in the first place. I felt before that I was very tied and didn't have options.
If I may, Mr. Thompson, this is not a done deal. Okay, from where I sit, this is not a done deal. And, well, let's just let the public hearing continue. I know you were here the night of the snowstorm, the second meeting, you've been here right along, and I don't consider this a done deal also.
Thank you.
Who would like to be next? Sir?
Hi, my name is Clem Carey. I live on 120 Sales Hill Road, and it so happens to be 11 years ago today that we moved into a brand new house, and I'm the one with the 3 cracks in the foundation. My son went to talk to Mr. Benoit on January 30th, and to tell him he wanted to know the name of the guy that did the blasting. And he ended up calling that guy, and I'm a little nervous because it's the first time they speak.
Okay, now you can relax.
And anyways, he called the blasting guy, got the phone number, and when he left Mr. Benoit to come to my house, he called the blasting guy from my house. And the guy told him for me to check with my homeowner's policy. And so I ended up calling my homeowner's policy to talk to my sales the insurance lady, and she said that she's going to send an appraiser to my house. So I got a call from my appraiser, and he came down and he said he took pictures, pictures of the foundation, and he said, I'll get back to you. Well, he did. He got back to me on February 10th. I got a letter in the mail that said my claim is dismissed because they don't have anything to do with earthquakes or earth movement, so they denied my claim. So now I'm stuck with 3 cracks in my foundation. Nobody even came to my house to check the cracks. Even talked to Mr. Benoit. And that didn't do any good. I mean, I don't know what kind of people they hired to do the blasting, but I don't think that was right for me to be stuck with a cracked foundation. So plus I have the $1,000 deductible on my insurance, but they won't cover it anyways. And as far as that zone change, I'm not for that also, because we got a lot of traffic on our street to start with, and when we get out on Sales Hill Road at the stop sign near Iron Mine Hill Road, you got a blind spot there. You take a risk just pulling out to take a left to go down the hill, because you can't see because of the trees that's in the way. And we had complained before about maybe they should put a diabolic mirror, or I don't know what they call it, one of those big round mirrors so you can see who's coming up the hill, because it's a blind spot. There's already a car that got totaled there that I know of, not counting the ones that I don't know about. That's a very dangerous intersection. If you want to go down, take a left. You take a chance, who knows how many accidents that happened that I don't know about. I don't think that it should be. It should stay the way it is, a rural country road. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
This had been zoned residential, continues to be zoned residential, and we're asking for a change to the residential. I said at the first meeting that I was against that. I said at the second meeting that I was against that. It's the third meeting, I'm still against changing the zone. Okay? We moved into this neighborhood, it'll be 6 years in August. Quality of life. My neighbors moved into this area for quality of life. They wanted to raise families. They wanted to raise families in a quiet area. And that's why they chose this area. That's why I chose this area. I have a young family. I have a 30-year mortgage. They brought up experts that they paid for that said that, oh, your property values are going to be fine, don't worry about it. I don't agree with that. I enjoy my time in my yard. And quite honestly, I've started to look elsewhere just because of this fact alone. I love my house. I love this town. My quality of life is going to be affected. The quality of life of my family is going to be affected. The quality of life of my neighbors is going to be affected. And I have a problem with that. Traffic's been mentioned. Go local problem. Last week, number 11 in New England in terms of accidents. Not in Rhode Island, New England. We're going to increase the size, bring in more customers, bring in 100 more employees. Not only have people been killed there, more people are going to be killed there. And I just hope it's not me or my family or my neighbors. As I was driving home the other day, something kind of disturbed me a little bit. It was before the last snowstorm. Somebody came out, marked off the street, ready to go. They marked it in snow, which wasn't too swift, because it's gone now. But it was all marked off, ready to go. The land is all marked off, ready to go. Zoning hasn't been approved yet. Now, Mr. Benoit owns this land, he can do whatever he wants with it, marking it off, zoning it off. Still zoned residential. I have a problem with moving ahead when something hasn't been voted on yet. That land was zoned residential when Mr. Benoit bought that land. Not zoned business highway for expansion, residential. So this has been in the plans for a long time. It's already marked off. Drive by, you'll see it marked off. I'm not gonna stand here and continue down the same path that we've been down and waste your time. Do you not agree with this? And I would like you to vote to keep it the way that it is. Thank you.
Paul Soares, 171 Sales Hill Road. I agree with the previous speaker, boss. I have one simple question. How far from a highway do you think it's reasonable to go into a residential area, a total distance from the highway, and still think that that's appropriate for our business highway designation? I don't know what the total footage is from Route 146 to the back of these houses that this proposal is for. But if you look at the map of business highway zoning in this town.
925 feet.
Please?
925 feet from the back of
From
my yard.
146 to your backyard.
900.
I don't think you'll find anywhere else in this town where a business highway zone extends that far into residential areas from a highway. And I think it's inappropriate. Maybe I'm wrong. Mr. Zelensky, obviously you have a map there.
I do, unfortunately, I don't have a scale ruler with me, but it looks like it's a long way.
It's a long way. And again, if you look at the other zoning along Route 146 or whatever other road in this town might be considered a highway, a business, a BH zone, do any other properties extend back that far to a BH zone? I think it's quite an infringement. And again, quality of life, blasting is a big concern. I know your vote tonight is only to determine whether you want to change the zone. But at some point, if you should do that, and I hope you don't, could you require a performance bond and a baseline study that would protect our wells and septic systems should something go wrong? I don't know, is that a requirement that you can make? Oh, okay. I'm hoping you can, if you decide to approve this. But again, I just think it's too much. And I live here for the same reasons that some previous speakers have said. Peace and quiet, rural character. Again, we have a very narrow road. There are children and people walking dogs and bicycling on it constantly. And right now, test drives come up Sales Hill Road. They come out of the dealership up Sales Hill Road and down by the gun club and then back out on 146. And we don't have sidewalks. It's a very narrow, windy road, and it's going to create a danger, a safety problem for our residents. And of course, we already know about the traffic problems. I don't need to reiterate any of those things. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Savoy, 138 Sales Hill Road. I'm not a public speaker. I don't like standing here, believe me, but I feel I have to. Many who are against this expansion will not speak out of fear, and some have gotten up and have spoken from their heart with frustration. I'm frustrated. Many neighbors are concerned and anxious about this expansion and everything that will come with it. Additional traffic as well as the effects of blasting. Anchor dealership is altering not only our backyard view, but such a huge part of the countryside, and there is a feeling of we can't stop it. People living on Sales Hill Road bought their homes surrounded by woods, just like Mr. Benoit did in Cumberland. In fact, his neighborhood is very similar to ours. I'm sure he enjoys his privacy and his wooded backyard when he's sitting out on his backyard deck. If he were expanding in Cumberland, I wonder how his neighbors would feel having someone like Mr. Benoit bringing in a dealership in the backyard. Our backyard is zoned residential, not commercial. No one bought their homes having commercial zone property in their backyard. This is being forced on us. As it stands, the buffer zone being offered is disappointing and unsatisfactory. A mere 35-foot no-cut buffer is 5 foot less than in length of a school bus. That's not acceptable. Yeah. For most people, their home is their biggest expenditure. You choose it carefully with hopes of staying there forever. Do you think people would have bought their homes on Sales Hill Road knowing that they would have acres of trees removed and replaced with a giant parking lot? Who here would want to live where we're about to live? Thank you.
Sales Hill Road. I, like everybody else, thinks the dealerships should stay on the highway. That's where they belong, on the highway. With a 35-foot cut, if this does pass, I have a bond, it's made out of cement blocks. That's going to be approximately 80 feet from the plastic. There's a lot of ledge. My backyard is a ledge. So behind the barn is a lot of ledge. My well is 125 feet from where that blast is going to happen. It's almost impossible not to have damage. If this neighborhood does have water problems, what is going to happen? There's not 1 or 2 homes over here. If there were 1 or 2 homes, you could knock them down and he could do what he wants. But this is a whole neighborhood. It's going to be affected. And it could be a disaster. It could be a disaster. The value of our homes, I feel the same exact way that somebody spoke earlier. It is going to affect the value of our homes. I don't think anybody in this room would want to live where we live right now. The value of our homes are going to go down. He hired experts to say it's not going to. Well, I agree, and I was going to say the same exact thing, that we should have our homes appraised. And there should be no issue if we decided we wanted to leave in a few years from now because we don't like where we live anymore. He's hired experts to say there's going to be no evaluation policy. Well, if there is, we should be reimbursed somehow, some way, because he should have no problem agreeing to that, because his expert said it's not going to happen. I think anybody, like I said, in this room would feel the same way we all feel. We're all nervous. We don't want to. None of us are going to want to live here. If you were in my backyard and you see what you see now, it's just going to be so much worse. The lighting, the dealership. Who wants a dealership in the backyard? And of anybody's backyard. I vote no. It shouldn't happen. It should stay residential. I mean, we all like our woods. We all wish it could stay like that. If something has to happen, I think I would rather look at some homes back there and a road on the side. I live right on the side of a big road. I'd rather see a road on the side of my house and homes over there, and that will not affect my value of my property. I'd rather see homes than a car dealership. It's all lit up like a damn animal.
Sandra Shores. I've been a full-time real estate agent for 15 years, and licensed in Rhode Island as well as Massachusetts. And there's no doubt in my mind that this will affect our property values. I'm on the opposite side of Sales Hill Road, so I don't feel it's as big a problem for us. But the people who back up to where the dealership is, their property's already been impacted by it, there's no question. And when that budding parcel is going commercial and business highway, it will make their properties less desirable. Location affects desirability, desirability affects value. So, whoever the expert that came that said it wouldn't affect value, I wouldn't accept that. I wouldn't accept that. It will make a difference. It will make a difference. I've had business in that area. I know that people have shied away when they see where the highway is and when they hear the noise. So it will make it worse. It will definitely affect our values.
I live at 77 Sales Hill Road. I did speak at the last meeting. Either said I was for nor against it, expressed my concerns. At this point, after hearing everything, I'm going to tell you there's no doubt in my mind I'm against the zoning change for several reasons. I did send an email to each and every one of you. I had no response, specifically listing things I had seen since that meeting. One thing I was assured of is the employees of that company were told don't do test drives on the street. It's not illegal. They absolutely have the right to. It's a public street, and I said that. However, it was said in this meeting that they were told not to do it. Since that day, now I'm retired, so I'm always at home. It's cold out. I don't spend my days staring at the street. So my casual observations are every day since that time, not less than twice a day, do I see a vehicle with one of their red service tags hanging on their rearview mirror, someone test driving, or their dealer plate going up and down the street. One of two things. They're either not being told not to go on the street, which we were assured they were, or they just don't care and they're going to do whatever they want to do. Multiply that by 50 or 100, a street with no sidewalks, in poor condition, and the traffic's just going to increase, and again, not be safe for residents to walk on the street with their dogs or children. First point. Everything else, the property value, I did make an anonymous phone call to a realtor. So hypothetically, if I owned a property that now is 300 yards closer to something that has changed to a commercial zone, would that affect my property value? The answer I got in less than a heartbeat was yes. What do you want to sell? That's exactly verbatim what was said to me. Also, to Mr. Thompson's point, where you asked him if he said he was against, or he did not say he was against it, I guess, in the last meeting I was at. I went to a informal meeting where the attorney for Ms. Christie spoke, gave some of his opinions. At that point, I personally, not speaking for anyone else, got the impression that this was a done deal. We just had to take it, and the best we could do was try to push it back as far as possible. That could have been the misconception. Because speaking for myself, that was the impression that I was given by the attorney hired by Ms. Christie. That was passed on. As far as everything else everyone said, I agree 100%. The quality of life will go down. I'm far enough away where I don't know if it would affect my well, my septic. I don't know. I'm not an expert. But clearly, the expert's opinion is just that. It's an opinion. They're basing on the best possible case scenario for the side that they're on. If everyone here hired their own expert, you get that many different expert opinions. They're just opinions in the end. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? that hasn't been
I
heard
want to say
yet?
one thing, I forgot some paperwork there.
Okay.
I wanted to say, roof on Figueroa on Sales Hill Road, I wanted to say that there is 900 feet for the his property to our property, 900 feet. How much is enough?
My name is James Christopher. I live at 110 Sales Hill Road. And I also moved to Sales Hill Road for the quality of life 28 years ago. I agree with just about everything that's been said here tonight. Several issues I would like to discuss. I'm also retired, and I probably do stare out my window a lot of times. And I have observed numerous, and when I say numerous times, that the vehicles from the Inco Subaru Nissan dealership using our street for test drives, sales drives, with and without plates at times. We have lots of children on the street, wait for the bus in the morning, and it usually goes on most of the day from 8, 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, deciding whatever. And they, you know, they go down at pretty good speeds. It's not 25 miles an hour like it should be. I watched the person just the other day come down the hill and slam the brakes on. And he took off, accelerated, slammed the brakes on again, all the way down past the line run club. Today, when I was leaving my house, there was a blue Nissan with temporary plates on it going up the hill. I assume on a sales ride going down Iron Mine Hill. I've gone down the hill many times. They have some sort of shrubbery near where the detailed building is. It's a blind spot. I'm coming down that hill more than once. A car pulls out, you can't see it till the last second. It's a real safety issue. At the traffic light, I've been at the traffic light and had cars from the dealership nudge right behind me about a foot away from me. They're almost trying to push me into the light like they're too impatient to wait. And once again, I'm sure that, you know, that's been denied. I know for a fact it is true. I mean, I've seen it every day, including today. Another issue is foundation cracks. When they built Route 99, which is even further away than that, I got cracks in my foundation, and they're blasting. And I had the same end result when I took my insurance. It was like, basically, oh well, tough luck. So I ended up with the damage to my property. And we had water issues in that area, so now I have a bit of water in my cellar at times. And, you know, we moved out there because it's the country. And it's convenient, it's close to Woonsocket. You don't have to drive 50 miles to Orville to see anything. We have wildlife up in the back of the house, all up and down the whole street. There are trails there for deer. We have fox, raccoons, turkey, numerous wildlife. And as we encroach on their environment, we're forcing them to move further and further back, away from the highway. And that concerns me. I'm a naturalist. I love to see the deer, and I love to see the turkeys and all the other animals. Also, being a naturalist, I love to watch the stars at night. I know that sounds a little strange, but it's true. Since they enlarged their parking lot down there, when I look at my backyard at night, off to my right, I see a great big white glare of fluorescent light glow all the way down my end of the street. So I can't even imagine if they extended that parking lot more. It would kind of look like we're seeing a meteorite hitting here. That's a concern to me also. I have Walmart on my left side, and I have bright lights on my right side, and I'm basically lucky if I can see the moon. I know that maybe it doesn't mean something to some people, but it does to me. The valuation, yes, I agree with that. You know, you like to think when you invest in your property for 30 years worth of money, that it would be a good investment. It's a proven fact that when you get approached on businesses close by, it does decrease the value of your property. I'm not an expert, but I know that for a fact. And, you know, there's always in the back of your mind this other worry that probably no one mentions. I'm sure Mr. Clay doesn't want to hear that either, but when things get tough all of a sudden, if they decide to bail out, what are we left with? You're gonna have a great big parking lot there full of tar and empty buildings. I'm old enough to go back to when Milk Tank was there and the Beacon was there years ago. When they moved out, his property sat there for years and years. As a matter of fact, the Milk Can still sits on the other side of the road with an eyesore. Nothing's ever happened with it. And those things can happen. You know, in this economy, I mean, sure, it's nice to have a new car, but, you know, Astor Ford was a huge operation at one time also. And, those are the things that we really need to consider. When I bought my property, I was told I had to buy a 2-acre lot minimum. It was residential suburban. And those are conditions I bought it under. And I didn't buy it under. Maybe down the road we had our fingers crossed and it's going to become a business area. As it is now, when you go down 146, you pass by the dealership, if you look up behind the trees, what you will left, I can see every house up on that street. Every house, their backyard. And that's pretty sad. I mean, you know, no privacy whatsoever. If you take away the rest of those trees, these people have a glorious view of 146 on a hot summer day with traffic backed up. That's what they'll be looking at. Like I said, I'm down the other end of the street, but it's still my neighborhood. You know, it's terrible as it is in the morning around 7 or 8 o'clock. They use our street for a bypass to beat out the traffic light. You come by our house at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, I'll invite you to my house if you want to sit there and watch. It's just car after car after car after car, most in Massachusetts, which is trying to beat the light. You know, our streets are very winding. It's a little 2-lane road. You come around this way, one curve, you might come around to Carrie's house. I almost got hit on one day there last week. It was snowing. Because some muck was coming the other way, you know, zipping around my corner. It's a very dangerous street. It's meant to be a neighborhood street and not a test area. And, I wasn't here at the last meeting, unfortunately, but I understand I was addressed and denied. I'm just stating for a fact that that is true. I see it every day, and if anyone went to the council, like you sit in my house, you observe, you bring video cameras, I'd be glad to have you come.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher.
Thank you.
Just ask that if there are any more comments, we can focus on any things that have not yet been mentioned. If anybody would like to make any final comments or remarks. If not, I would ask if the council has any questions or comments.
Mr. President, I have comments. I've looked at the map of the proposed plan. I've heard testimony. I've looked at the neighborhood. I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. I find this application totally incompatible with the general neighborhood in which they want to relocate or expand the business. So I'm going to be voting no on this.
I just have one main concern that bothered me on it was the blasting. That is a concern, and I think like the performance bonding, if it went through, that something would have to be addressed, because that's one of my biggest worries on this whole thing, is the blasting. It seems to be everybody else's, and dealing with insurances, I've seen the way it happens, and it's actually like they're saying. So if that could be addressed, I think that would be a big deal too.
Anybody else? One of the things that strikes me, just comparing January 21st to now, my sense was that I've heard everyone's concerns loud and clear, but I'm just struck by the difference between what we heard on the 21st and what we're hearing tonight. Because what I heard on the 21st was a lot of discussion about Mr. Benoit meeting with neighbors, working on compromises that were win-win. There was an enormous amount of focus and discussion on the extent of the buffer, whether it could or it couldn't be increased, or whether that was desirable and how that could be accomplished. There was a lot of discussion on the blasting. I remember some back and forth and questions. I'm sort of struck this evening by what I perceive as being a very big difference between the 21st and tonight. I'm not minimizing the concerns, I'm just pointing out that I noticed that difference. I would like to offer the opportunity to Mr. Igliozzi, knowing if you'd like to respond to some of what you heard.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Dave talk and we've got some people to discuss. I just wanna kinda, as I'm sitting there listening to what's going on, I just wanna kinda, in general, I wanna come back at the end. But I wanna just say that my position hasn't changed. I mean, I see a big difference here as well. But I also think that it's excitement that was built up under negative context. You know, there is a drawing that was drawn up by somebody that was false, passed around by all these neighbors, to the neighbors.
Excuse me. So, allow Mr. Benoit, he's got the floor. Let's just,
I mean, it
let him
shows,
be heard, please.
what it shows is, what I was told it showed, was me developing Mary's property with no buffers, having cars driving down on Sales Hill Road. That's not the case here. You know, my intent, and always was my intent, and is still my intent, to work with planning. We have a long way to go on master plan. There's a lot of, you know, there's gonna be a lot of give and take, a lot of discussion on what's possible, what's not possible. I mean, there's, you know, one of the gentlemen spoke of markings. I mean, yeah, we surveyed the land, we had a market. We are doing test holes to figure out where the ledge is. You know, we're trying to figure out what can and can't be done. So this isn't me saying, hey, this is a done deal. This is far from a done deal. I think, you know, let's not forget, I mean, I'm the guy that reached out and said, look, I want input. And we've made reasonable changes. You know, we're trying to figure out how to pull the blasting away. I mean, I got experts, I got people that are going to discuss a lot of things after I sit down. But the reality is, you know, my concerns are as well their concerns. Now, I want to just comment on the gentleman with the foundation. I mean, the part that's, unfortunately, his son didn't tell me was, look, there's a process that the blasting expert's going to talk about, but at the end of the day, I said to his son, look, here's the name of the blaster, file a claim against his insurance company. If they don't pay, come see me and I'll pay for it. That's what I said to him. Oh, I said it. So the reality is, this isn't really high.
Excuse me. I'm going to ask, from a protocol standpoint, any communications are directed through the chair. Now, the applicant sat patiently listening to comment, and I just think that he is afforded the same right that we listen to his comment. If we want to have discussion about what he says, we can have plenty of time to continue this forward, but we can do that. But I'm going to insist that we all respect a person's opportunity to be heard.
You know, there is no doubt how that conversation went. I told him that do the process. If the process fails you, come back and see me, and I'll write a check and fix it. So he can come here and say that I didn't say it. I'd love to hear it out of his mouth, but that's the reality. My approach to this project, the whole way, is to try to do it in a manner to minimize. You know, they talk about, I'm going to have real estate experts, everyone get up. Look, there is an effect. I'm not suggesting, please don't take this the wrong way. Anything that happens there will affect it. There's a lot of things I can do there other than a parking lot that closes at 8 o'clock at night. So any development there, which we're going to develop at some level, is going to have some impact. But I'm also in this business. I also understand the fear of the unknown. You know, people know I own that property. People know that something's going to happen. So
I just have to interrupt for a second, because we're approaching the 10 o'clock hour, and I need to have...
Motion, Mr. President, continue the meeting to 10:30.
Motion by Mr. Zawinski to continue to 10:30. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Alice. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Alice? Yes. McGee?
Yes.
Yazbek?
Yes.
Mr. Zalinski?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes, proceed.
So at this point, I'm going to let my people kind of discuss and try to, you know, frame up explanations. But underlying in this whole deal, I want everyone to kind of keep in mind, I'm not this big bad guy developer. I'm trying to do this in such a manner where it can work for everybody. I have a job to do. It's not, I got a representative sitting right here from Subaru that's looking for an answer tonight. I have obligations that I have to meet. If I can't meet them, I gotta move. I don't wanna move. But I wanna try to do this the right way. I mean, as it stands right now, I'm losing over 40% of my property that I willingly gave up to try to make a deal, to make this work on this site. We can talk about lighting, we can talk about blasting, you know. One of the plans this evening was, you know what, pull the glass line all the way back to the back edge of the building. You know, maybe change the grade. You know, these are all things that we can discuss at master plan level. You know, we showed what we felt, you know, was reasonable to highlight. But we, you know, we got other things that we got a long way to go. We got a lot of approvals, but we can't get out of the box until we get the green light to get out of the box. You know, this isn't the live all end all. And we're done here. If we ever get a vote in the next couple of weeks or whenever this happens, that ain't it. Everyone's got input. We're all going to have input. We're all going to be working together. I want to work together. I want to come to a solution. I want it to work. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to go 6 feet, I'm going to cut the trees down. I mean, that's not what I'm doing. I left it right the way it was to sit here and have an honest discussion as to how to develop the property. I could have been playing with this thing for the last 10 years. And we'd be sitting here with no trees and all this stuff going, okay, now what do you want to talk about? I'm not doing that. I'm being legit. I'm here to try to do the right thing. I'm going to let my experts get up and have discussion on some of their concerns from a technical perspective. But I just, again, I go back to what I said the last time. At the end of the day, who are you working with? Are you doing business with someone you can trust? Somewhere along the line is a leap of faith here. I believe I proved myself. I did a project up front that came out beautiful, above everyone's expectations. I, frankly, plan on doing that again. I'm not trying to wedge this down anyone's throat. I just want to do the right thing. I want to end up with a good end result for everyone. I can appreciate we want to keep the trees. That ain't happening. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Something's going to happen. So let's work together to get an end result we can all live with. That's what I want to do.
I have a question for Mr. Bryant,
Sure.
Mr. Clark. Mr. Bryant, you have a representative of Subaru here.
Yes.
You spent a great deal of money building those beautiful walls. And now I hear tonight that Subaru is going to threaten to pull your dealership if this is not granted.
That's not what I said.
Oh,
What I said was, I have obligations to meet, in order to, they make projections that talk about, okay, both franchises, by the way, have this with both franchises. They make projections based on statistical data beyond my, you know, they look at population, they look at cars on the road, they look at scrap rates, they look at all these things to determine what the market's going to be. Now, what the market's going to be is up. So, I need to provide, our market share with Subaru is growing. When I first got with Subaru, we were at 1.2% of the total market share. We're at 5%, looking to go to 10%, which means of every car sold, instead of being 1 of 10, I'm 4 of 10 or whatever. So, the bottom line is, I have to be able to service a certain amount of customers that they project. If I can't meet those requirements, then yes, they have a right of termination, both franchises. So I've looked at that data, and they've told me what they need. So I'm trying to accommodate that need so that I can stay in business. Now, behind door number 2 is, I don't know if anyone's looked, next to the church down on Route 1 is a new Subaru building being constructed as we speak. That building's sole purpose is to steal my customers. Now, Jeff will sit here and say, hey, you know, it's gonna open the market up and blah, 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 but we all know this is a competitive business. So, if I lose the customers to Massachusetts, the cars go to Massachusetts, the employees go to Massachusetts, I lose my edge. I have to be competitive against the new Subaru guy, and you all know the new Nissan guy that just built the $9 million building on Route 1. I'm up against that guy. I gotta increase the showroom size on my Nissan side. I've got some expansion I need to do to be competitive against those guys. So if I don't, even if Jeff doesn't pull the plug on me, the concern that the other gentleman said, yeah, it's a pretty good shot, I can't compete, and it's over. Then you will have vacant buildings. This is necessary to stay competitive against the markets around me. I want to keep the business where it is. Now, look, I wish you guys were here. That's my brother. I went back the last time and said, look guys, I don't want anyone on that road. I didn't say it never happened. I said I tell them not to have it happen, and I continue telling them. You know, I try. I get it. And I wish no one ever drove back there. But believe me, it is prevalent. I grabbed the kid today. I seen him come down the hill. I grabbed him, brought him in my office. Look, I do everything I possibly can. If it's not good enough, I'm sorry. But listen, considering the traffic, we're really not adding, you know, we're trying not to add a lot. You know, I need to be able to do this to stay. It's that simple. And I want to do it in a way that we can all live with. How do we get there? You know, look, you guys all know there are options there that aren't so pretty. I believe what I'm proposing is a great option.
Mr. Benoit, I appreciate the business situation you're in, but you need to understand the situation this council's in. As you must work business-wise with Subaru, we must represent these people in town of Smithfield. So that's my point. I'm a little taken back that you are under pressure to feel that a car manufacturer will pull your dealership. You're very successful. You've invested a lot of money in it. We have people out there that have 30-year, I'm speaking to
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. We have people out there that have 30-year mortgages. There's a butting of heads going on here. I feel sorry that the dealership, the dealer, what's the term on this? What do you call Subaru? The Subaru would pull your wife as your dealer. That's...
Wait till you're done. I appreciate your vision on that, the reality.
Well, the vision is to go forward up front before we got to this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality, right? I mean, we're only as good as what we did yesterday in business. Business isn't this, you know, thing that, hey, I've done a great job up to 19 years. My sales get cut in half. I'm sitting in front of commissions and getting termination letters. This isn't fantasy land, unfortunately. This is, I gotta perform at expected levels by two manufacturers every day. This isn't about, you know, I did a great job building a wall. I did a great job last year selling more cars than I ever sold. It doesn't matter.
But you were aware of this. When you were building these walls, were you aware that
I have confidence in myself. I have confidence in the fact that I'm going to find a way to survive. That I'm going to find a way to meet my obligations. I'm going to find a way. It's just a question of am I finding it there or somewhere else. I'm not ending this 19-year train. I've been there 19 years. I got 30-year mortgages there. And I'm about to jump in for another 20 and 30. And so, you know, we're all in the same boat. I am sympathetic. Believe me, I get it. But the question, I can't change the demands that are put on me. All I can do is work with them. And I'm trying to work with them. And I took a proactive approach, reaching out to people because I understood, let's work together. I mean, I gotta tell you, you know, there's so much we could do to make this work. So much we could do. Instead of going backwards, let's go forward. I just, and I get it, I understand, this kind of stuff takes its own momentum. When you think you can stop it, or you wanna stop, you know, that's great. I've also, look, I've sit on several committees. I also see what happens when, you know what, it's happening. And then people shift gears, and they get in progressive mode. Good things can happen. You're dealing with a guy that's gonna work with you. You're dealing with a business that wants to work with you. I'm not sitting here saying I'm gonna ram it down your throat, I'm gonna cut trees, I'm not saying that. And that has to mean something. I can appreciate you have something to do, Mr. Zelinski, with the outcome of these people. But somewhere along the line, you gotta look at the crystal ball just like I have to with my manufacturers and say, look, what are the options? What it is today is not an option. So what is this guy gonna put forward, and what can we do to control the outcome in such a way that works? Look, the blasting, I mean, the blasting was there to drop the grade, to drop the lights, because the lights was a major concern. What if we came up with an idea that says, okay, let's pull the blasting back to the back end of the building, drop the building down 16 feet, do no blasting past the back of the building, and then build a tier, fence the tier, light the tier, shut the lights off at 8 o'clock, and we're done. Now all of a sudden, we're not blasting 25 feet. Frankly, we're probably blasting 2 feet along the front edge where the building is. We're setting up walls. Okay, my point is, that's all master plan. That's all stuff we can all talk about. Just because you say yes today doesn't mean I can do what I want. Right? I mean, the planning board, everyone has a say. This doesn't mean it's carte blanche for Bob Benoit. It isn't. This just allows me to spend the money to work with the people to do it right. That's what this means. I'm going to let my experts do their thing. I just want everyone to understand where I'm coming from here. If I had my way, I'd do nothing. I'd like to cruise my way to retirement and be done with it. I don't have that option. David?
Mr. President, we'll try to be brief, but just again, I took notes on, obviously, some of the comments Councilman indicated the issue of blasting, and Mr. Benoit actually alluded to two issues. One, we actually have a blasting expert. To just be clear, because there's been a lot of discussion about what the real process is, what the approval process is, who has the authority to approve it, and obviously what impact it would have on it. And if you just give me a few minutes with him, just so the record's clear as to what the process is. Mr. Richard Grove, let us have him. You just briefly tell the board, you swear in the witness, I don't know if the council swears in witness. Do that? No. Maybe you could just tell the council briefly, Mr. Grove, your background, so they know who you are, your educational and your professional experience briefly.
My name is Richard Grohl, Richard J. Grohl, industrial seismologist. I am specialized in the measurement of vibration sound from blasting and other construction activities. I was asked to examine the type of project that was being done here and location, and to be able to answer some questions and concerns from the neighbors and from the board regarding the anticipated blasting or the proposed blasting on the site. In the state of Rhode Island, blasting was regulated by the State Fire Marshal's Office. Permits are issued by the State Fire Marshal's Office. It's a very strictly regulated process. When you blast in Rhode Island, you've got to have insurance and a license. Also, a permit is issued before any blasting is performed. The blasting contractor is regulated by about 7 different regulatory authorities, state and federal, Department of Transportation, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the State Fire Marshal's Office, Homeland Security. There's enormous amount of regulation in blasting today. All blasting that would be designed for the site would be designed in a manner that would preclude the possibility of damage from vibrations to any materials which the nearest homes are comprised. The blasting design is implemented by simply designing the blast based on the distance to the closest structure, and then using a blast design that will not create a level of vibration that will exceed the strain failure characteristics of the weakest materials that comprise the closest structures, which is plaster on lath. The regulations in Rhode Island which govern a blast design to prevent damage to plaster on lath were established by the United States Bureau of Mines in a report that was published in 1980. It's known as Structure Response and Damage Produced by Surface Mine Blasting. And what they actually did was they instrumented a group of structures around active surface mines, and they meticulously examined all of the existing cracks in each of the buildings, and they put strain gauges on these cracks, and they also instrumented the buildings and the ground surface outside of the buildings, and very carefully determined what level of vibration would cause damages to various construction materials. Plaster and drywall are most sensitive. They're freestanding, soft, and light relative to a foundation. They are at least 50% more sensitive to vibration than masonry, such as brick or block or ceramic tile, and they're about 10 times to 100 times, depending on the type of construction, more or less resistant than poured concrete. Poured concrete that's unreinforced is not quite as resistant as poured concrete which is reinforced, but in any event, poured concrete is about the last material that you would suffer change from as a result of blast vibrations. Even more resistant to blast vibrations are water wells and septic tanks, gas lines, and other buried lines. They must be able to withstand the strains that are produced by frost, burial, transportation implements like lawnmowers, trucks, cars, things like that that drive over them. Therefore, when they're designing a blast to prevent damage to existing cracks in plaster and drywall, or change to existing cracks in plaster and drywall in the nearest structures, they are inherently protecting the more resistant structures as well. If you were to feel that you had any form of damage produced by blast vibrations, the remedy is actually to go to the State Fire Marshal's office to file a complaint. You would not go to anybody else, you would simply contact them directly. The State Fire Marshal's office is located at 118 Parade Street in Providence, and Bob Mallory generally deals with complaints. He's the representative from the State Fire Marshal's office. There really should be no change in the condition of any of the surrounding structures from modern blasting activities, regardless of the depth of the cuts and the distance to the surrounding structures, as they simply make smaller charges and they increase the number of repetitions within the blast to reduce the weight of explosives detonated at any given instant, and therefore the level of vibration that would be produced at any given instant off of any sequence of charges.
So let me just ask you a couple of quick questions.
Yes.
You were looking at the map that's before the board tonight that we handed in. It's the that diagram that we had indicated, Mr. Chairman. And on that diagram, you see a building indicating future building expansion, 10,000 square feet to 24,000 square feet. And Mr. Benoit spoke with you at some length about the buffer zone with the back of the property.
Yes.
And during that discussion, you were asked whether or not Rhode Island has any distance from blasting that's required.
No.
You asked that question?
Yes, I was asked that question.
And what was your answer to that, just so we're clear?
There is no regulation on offering inspections of surrounding properties before blasting is performed in the state of Rhode Island like there is in Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
But in Massachusetts, there is a regulation.
Yes, there is.
And what is the distance from the blasting to the nearest structure where you normally request a pre-blasting report?
250 feet.
And in this particular case, we had measured with the help of the engineer, because Mr. Benoit had indicated to you that he was going to move the blasting to the back, as close to the back of that building as possible.
Yes.
All that discussion?
Yes.
And as a result of that discussion, did you determine were there any structures within 250 feet that were not owned by Mr. Benoit?
There were not.
But in addition to that, Mr. Benoit had a discussion with you of all the buildings along the back property line, did he not, that are represented by these neighbors?
Yes.
And he indicated to you that he would submit pre-blasting reports for those properties if they wanted.
Yes.
Even though they're all beyond 250 feet.
That's correct.
And really, when we did the math today, some are, the closest one was over 400 feet away, isn't that right?
Yes, somewhere in that range, yes.
But Mr. Benoit had indicated to you that you were pre-blasting report for all the neighbors along the back line.
Yes.
And explain to the council what would be the benefit of a pre-blasting report? Just so we're clear on that.
Pre-blast inspection is documentation of the conditions surrounding the property prior to blasting being performed nearby. What it is the blasting contractor is offering to demonstrate before they perform their work that they are not causing harm to the surroundings. Pre-blast inspection is an interior and exterior documentation of existing cracks in the wall, ceilings, and floors, all the brittle materials which comprise a structure. We look for cracks in brick, block, glass, ceramic tile, plaster drywall, siding, roofing, windows, concrete driveways, retaining walls, swimming pools, bird baths, anything to which vibration damage can be construed, and simply record in video format what we are looking at and keep that as a record in the event that there is a claim of damage after the fact. I routinely perform these inspections. They're done in a meticulous manner, very, very tedious meticulous manner. Typically, a home takes 1 to 3 hours to inspect, depending on its size, age, and the condition of the construction materials that are formed. Typically, well, actually, rarely do I see any change in the condition of a property after blasting is performed when such an inspection is done beforehand. As a matter of fact, in Massachusetts, where the inspections are a stipulation of blasting permits throughout the Commonwealth, of all of the claims that are registered with the local fire departments, the regulatory authorities in Massachusetts, 90% of all claims of damage actually come from homes which are outside of the 250-foot radius and have a lower exposure than those that were offered the inspections and had the inspections performed. Furthermore, in Massachusetts, you have to provide copies of the inspections to the property owners that requested them in writing. I have provided hundreds of these copies over the last 25 years, and fewer than 10 have ever resulted in a formal complaint of damage after the property owner had been given access to the document and had a chance to review it to see if, in fact, what they thought might have been damage actually was not already demonstrated within pre-blast inspection.
Question? How does the pre-blast inspection apply to water supply, for example, that isn't visible?
What we do is we record the condition of the wellhead, the ground around it, and the water supply system within the home, meaning there's a holding tank, captive air storage tank, oftentimes with a basket filter, or there's a softener, things like that. We just record what their general condition is. There can actually be a detailed, beyond, we also run the water. Either we'll do what's known as a bucket test, or we'll actually take a water sample and have it run to a lab. And videotape also what the condition of the water is as it sits in a glass for a period of minutes. It's all visual. That's when we do a pre-blast inspection. You can also have a pre-blast water test done where there's actually a gentleman here who's specialized in that type of work, that he can describe more adequately how they would go about testing the well or testing the water that were so chosen to be done.
To your point, Mr. President, actually, we have a well expert to address that issue. I just have to answer your question directly. We get specifically answer the question. It's Mr. Robert Ferrari. He's the president of Water Solutions, and maybe he can just briefly tell you his background and what he was asked to discuss. Yeah.
Is it Mr. Crow?
Grohl.
G-R-O-W?
Actually, may I approach?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. I had it right. Mr. Grove, I have a question for you. What is the combustion explosive, what is used when you're in a aquifer recharge area? Is there a certain type of explosive that's more desirable than another?
Well, to answer that question, the best or the product that is most commonly recommended when they're working, when blasters are working in an area of groundwater sensitivity, like where you're in a capacity groundwater area, watershed that recharges water wells. The bulk emulsion in large blasting is generally what's recommended. Now, in any case, regardless of explosive product, what's far more important than the type of explosive is the fact that the explosive is fully combustible.
Correct.
But generally speaking, the industry for like production blasting and larger blasting, they recommend an emulsion product, but that it be properly primed, that it not just be underprimed, that it actually be primed sufficiently that it combusts all of the explosive charge. But realistically, the only explosive that is generally not recommended around groundwater sensitive areas would be those which contain perchlorates. And as a matter of fact, in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, I don't know about Rhode Island, but I suspect also in Rhode Island, the people who supply explosives will no longer supply perchlorate-containing explosives simply because of the water issue, because they did show up in groundwater at some point, and they did not want that to be a liability. So they no longer supply those in this region.
Thank you.
Before we hear, Mr. Ferrari, before we hear from Mr. Ferrari, I just want to know that it's 10:27. We've been authorized to go to 10:30. What's the council's pleasure? We do have other business tonight. This is an important issue. I don't want to short circuit this. We could, but we could also continue other business. We're going to need a motion to continue beyond 10:30 if we're going to hear any more discussion on this tonight.
Mr. President, we have other business to take care of this evening. I have no problem making a motion to continue the application for zoning change to a date certain, so that we can get through some of our other business this evening. And then I make a motion that we continue to 11 o'clock, so we can take care of other town business.
A motion has been made by Mrs. Walensky. Is there a second? There'll be time for discussion. Seconded by Councilor Alex. Discussion.
Mr. President, again, we understand, as you know, Mr. Benoit has obviously incurred a lot of expense having a number of witnesses here with many identifications. I would just ask, we did defer to the other matter ahead of us that was actually behind us. We just asked for some more time to present some of this information perhaps. That way if we go to a date certain, we don't have to bring all these people back. I'd like to just take some more of this testimony.
I agree. Everybody's here now. I'd like to finish this.
You know, Mr. President, have no objection, I'll stay here till 1 in the morning. I'm just concerned that somebody, one of our council members, may have concerns about staying that late. But we do have to conduct business. I would make a motion, we move them to midnight. I can do that right now. Well, we have other business to take care of. So I'll make a motion, we continue the meeting to midnight.
We have a motion on the table. Motion's withdrawn. Another motion by Mr. Zelinski to continue to midnight. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there another motion? Motion to continue. Motion to continue to 11 p.m. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. McGee. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes. Now there's a question about how much time we want to devote to this versus other town business. Does anybody have an opinion on that? We have 30 minutes left.
Excuse me, how much time would be sufficient for what you have to bring out to?
I do think we could,
You know, at minimum, I'd like to at least have the experts discuss what's going on. In terms of voting and all that,
Just get your experts in and get everyone. That would make sense.
my objective again is to try to, ease the minds, and let's get productive discussion, We've got 2 more weeks, maybe some people in this sector.
I would prefer if we could do that. I would also like to leave some time to conduct some other business.
Yeah.
give us 20 minutes?
Let's see what 15, 20 minutes does it.
Why don't we aim for 15? Let's see if we can get done in 15. I think it's safe to say, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't think we're going to be taking any votes this evening on this.
So, again, Mr. President, members of the council. Back to Mr. Ferrari's.
I'd like to hear it briefly. My name is Robert F. Ferrari. I live at 800 Gibson Hill Road in Green, Rhode Island. I work as a professional engineer in Rhode Island in 17 other states, practice in all of them. I have 38 years of experience in the field of water supply, treatment, storage, distribution, with heavy emphasis on a wide variety of groundwater development, using bedrock wells, gravel tap wells.
Between the people we make and the
Where's the gym guy? Drinking that.
water supply treatment storage. Pretty emphasis on water
Groundwater development, wide variety of wells, including drilled bedrock wells, gravel patch wells, dug wells, modified bedrock wells. Again, we work extensively in Rhode Island. My firm also operates 63 public water systems in the state of Rhode Island, which involve more than 150 wells that we're responsible for. And that includes the public water system serving the North Smithfield Elementary School, North Smithfield High School, Middle School campus.
I can restate the question. We heard a great deal about the ability to do pre-blasting inspections. And we were talking about things like walls and foundations and the brittle things. But my question was, how does that apply to a water system that you can't see because it's below ground?
Well, you just raised a key issue, and there's actually a way to deal with that. Just a tad more background here. My firm and myself, one of our specialties is the investigation and evaluation of existing wells, particularly the physical and operating condition and rehabilitation of wells. You can do a pre-blast survey or evaluation of a well, and the way you do it is you camera, and you put a submersible camera down the well. Depending on the extent you need to go to, you certainly want to examine the casing. All bedrock wells have steel casings. I would suspect the majority of the residential wells in the area have 6-inch diameter carbon steel casings. Typically, they're driven to bedrock a minimum of 5 feet, depending, of course, on the condition of the bedrock. The more weathered the bedrock is, the further you get under the casing. You need to carefully examine the seal between the bottom of the casing and the bedrock, and you may go further down the well, all the way to the bottom if necessary, to examine the condition of the materials and debris in the well, where the key water-bearing fractures, things of that nature. You can create this record typically with the cameras that are used. You actually videotape the record of the borehole casing, and that establishes the physical condition of the well before any construction work or any blasting work can be done. And you can go beyond that. You can take the water quality samples or run water analyses to establish the water quality in the well at any point in time. That's not unusual to do that, and firms like my own do that fairly often, as a matter of fact. Both either examining existing wells or even examining brand new wells to make sure that they've been constructed properly. And that's how you do it. And then, of course, once the inspection is done, you reinstall the well pump, the riser, the power cable, reconnect the pitless adapter, sanitize the well, and get a final what we call validation sample that the well is, from a bacterial standpoint, you're in compliance. And we'll bring that and use to the residents.
I do want to be mindful of the roughly 15-minute time period. So I'll defer to you as to how best you want to use the remaining 15 minutes. And I also want to assure people that this is my intention to motion when we're done with this to continue the public hearing. So this is not the last. I'm not planning to close the public hearing.
I would like to ask him a question that we didn't answer that I think would be helpful.
Okay.
In our meeting tonight, we had a discussion talking about the depth of the well, and if the blasting is happening up on a surface as deep as, let's say, 25 feet, which was the original proposal, which was talking about, but let's if at 25 feet, what is the likely impact of these wells at 200 to 300 feet? And just talk briefly, because time is of the essence, the fracturing and the fracking and things like that.
At distances of 200 to 300 feet, or obviously more, there's going to be negligible impact from superficial blasting. I'd like to point out that we actually develop wells by doing hydrofracturing, either with high pressure water or even explosive charges that are down in the borehole. You actually blast out, and then you flush the well. That's how you develop a well and increase the flow capacity of the well. But when you're doing superficial ledge blasting, whether it's 150 feet away, 200 feet away, your vibrations go through the ground. It is possible that if you have, say, iron oxide coatings on the inside of the well, oxidized iron, that can flake off the well, and occasionally that can result in people saying, I have rusty water after some construction was done. We see this, by the way, even like the city of Providence. They have construction done along the city streets, and all of a sudden the piping, you get material flaking off the inside of the piping into the water, and people are complaining about rusty water. So that's a condition that's very temporary, and that will clear up in a very short period of time. But as far as structural damage, short of me doing blasting, I mean, immediately adjacent to a well, it's not going to happen. And by the way, at my own house, I blasted ledge to 10 to 15 feet into the ground, and I was less than 150 feet from my own well, and I had no well damage.
Mr. President, just again, the expert both in water and blasting, obviously intended to demonstrate what impact there would be, if any, but in addition to that, just because of the perception that blasting is too close, even though it's more than 250 feet away, which is the Massachusetts standard, and Rhode Island has no standard. Mr. Benoit, if you look at the map there, that shows the cutaway from the side view of what was originally proposed. And if you look at, you see the black line that's above the grade? See the black line? Can you point that out, Joe? That black line there? That black line is the existing grade of the land right now. And Mr. Benoit, again, without knowing the exact distance at this moment, has talked to them about, again, I didn't know that diagram there, but that little dotted line would be an approximate distance to the back of the proposed future addition, where Mr. Benoit would also, okay, Mr. Benoit, what would you want to do?
There was several discussion with Mr. Schwartz. There was, in the last, what I'm about to discuss, we'll do a couple of things, and that's what we discovered tonight. By moving, by bringing this up, it allows to make this area here basically flat on the top side. So it provides a full 60 feet of flat surface. I don't want to call it no cut because we have to work in this area, but when we're done, we'll provide the plantings and everything necessary. But by bringing this up, we don't have to necessarily step this. We can make it straight up here and make it 35 and 25. But one of the thoughts was, if the building's over here somewhere and the expansion building might be this far. So if we left whatever's necessary for the fire department, so here's 25 feet or something like that, whatever it ends up being. You know, if we cut to here, this cut, this is approximately 16 feet. 5 of it is dirt. So I've got about a 10-foot cut-ish. We've got to go in and do formal sampling. But based on what I know today, that this will be a 10-foot cut here. I've got 5 feet of dirt here. Okay? I only need to go down 2 feet. So I'm essentially, by tiering it, I can move the blast line to here, which now puts it several hundred feet away. Additionally, what it does, if the building, I don't know the exact, but let's say it's 25 feet high, or however high it is in the back, I'm blocking 16 feet of it now at ground level. So the visual, even with all the extensive blocking and infilling that I propose to do and work with people on, even with that, if you're fortunate enough to get up over a tree and look down, I'm covering virtually 75–80% of the building behind a wall that you won't even see. Because in here there was some discussion of architectural, well, that minimizes that by hiding it behind the wall. Again, this is all a work in process with a lot of people. This came up tonight because I got some moorings and I finally got some answers on. So when they showed this to me, I'm like, all right, I don't know how excited I am going 25 feet right up against the guy's backyard. Let's call it what it is. You know, all the experts are well, but I wasn't comfortable either. So I'm like, all right, how do we move this thing? You know? And there's a lot more to this. I could go on for another 20 minutes. But essentially, these are the kinds of things that can happen with progressive conversation. That's just one example of what we can do to make this better. That came up tonight.
So it's 10:43. If there's another quick comment that you'd like to have an expert make this here.
I think the most important thing is if the council needs to, obviously for the record, I assume you set forth to the gentleman that had first to vote. We need a motion.
Yeah, we don't have a process for it.
If you have a specific question for them, we just presented what we were trying to present because it was this discussion about plastic having an impact that was negative, and we wanted to give you scientific evidence for three things. And the one thing that Mr. Grohl also told you, and if you didn't clarify, let me clarify it, that because it's blasting and it goes through the department, you know, the state fire marshal, it's considered an ultra hazardous activity, and there is strict liability for damages as opposed to negligence. There's a slight standard there. Basically, as long as there's a causal connection between the damage and the blasting, the payment is, the bond that's on file, which the fire marshal covers that payment.
No,
Well, and Mr. Benoit has obviously indicated a couple of things.
Is that for the record, Mr. Benoit?
Yeah.
Is that for the record? Would you mind saying
I'm
that?
going to tell you what he said. I'm going to tell you what he said. Mr. Benoit said, one, as I indicated to you, he paid for pre-blasting well beyond the Massachusetts standard, never mind the Rhode Island standard, for everybody along the back buffer, for the sole purpose of establishing whether or not there is a causal connection, and if there's a causal connection, it's not covered by the bond he paid for. I don't know. I don't know how much more assurance in this house for that.
And I'll do the well and the houses. So I'll do both.
And I say that in triple layers, you know, there's the state fire marshal protection, strict liability protection. The state regulates this process, to the minute.
Councilor McGee has a question.
I just want to know, on the saying you're going to do the well and the preliminary before that, I like that idea, but how many houses does that include? Is it 4? Is it
7 or 8, whatever, well, I didn't count them, but whatever's along whatever's along
and what's the cost of pulling pumps and doing that inspection with the video camera?
just shy of 10 grand
For all of them? I just want to know. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to continue the public hearing and the, did I get that correctly here, and the petition to rezone property as described in this agenda to March 17th? Moved by Councilor Zawinski, is there a second? Second by Councilor Alves. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. And I'm going to suggest that we continue item number 8, old business, to a future agenda. I'm also going to